Who will finish as the Vols' biggest offensive weapon? Dylan Sampson, Jaylen Wright, Squirrel White, or somebody else? That's the discussion we'll have right now. And I'm going to tell you the biggest offensive weapon because of his consistency and ability to move the chains. As much as I love Sampson, as much as I love Jaylen Wright's ascension, and Squirrel White is a freak athlete. Sampson out of the group may have had the best offseason of all of these guys. It's McCoy. He's going to provide some big plays. He's going to be able to move the chain. As far as Jaylen Wright, he's going to have to share carries with Jabari Small and Dylan Sampson. So we'll reference Sampson as well. Squirrel White is going to provide more explosive plays. The guy that is going to make this thing go, because he's going to be able to get jump balls, he's going to be able to create separation, even though he's not the fastest guy in the world. He's big, strong. He's going to get away with some pushes. It's McCoy. He's Tennessee's biggest offensive weapon, and we haven't said his name enough in the offseason. I've thought it all along. It's kind of like a combination of an explosive receiver and a tight end that can move the chains. Think of him like that, because he's going to be impossible for a lot of cornerbacks to cover because he's so big and physical. And listen, you can get away with push-offs, and he's good at that because he keeps his hand low. You just can't go above the shoulders. That's the old rule. Nick Saban created that for defensive backs, and a lot of receivers use that as well. I'm taking McCoy, and I feel confident. You?
To quote a man who apparently has the body type of a wide receiver, wrong. It's Squirrel White. And it's Squirrel White because of the chemistry he and Joe Milton had last year. I don't know if you noticed, but Squirrel White's the one guy in this in the country that can catch a Joe Milton overthrow. And there's going to be quite a few Joe Milton overthrows. So I think that's why Squirrel White is perfect for Joe Milton. And he caught a lot of Joe Milton balls last year. So I think because Joe Milton is in there, Joe Milton can actually let it fly. And he doesn't really have to worry about timing it with his receiver because Squirrel White's going to get to the ball. So I'm going Squirrel White.
Now, when we talked about a lot, Zachary mentions him. Dante Thornton is going to be a beast. Zachary, I would have said absolutely you're right 2 months ago, but I've heard so much talk on and off the record about Squirrel, and I think there's a reason they rested Jacob Warren throughout some of preseason camp. They didn't push him. That makes me think, even though we talked about they may go to 4 wide more often, I don't think that's going to be the case. So, Zachary, you could prove to be right, but it feels like to me that Dante Thornton is kind of on that second level of projected playmakers, Caleb. I know you were high on Thornton too. So what is your take? Does it not have that feel a little bit?
It does. And I go by potential, but we've talked a lot about Addison Nichols and Gerald Mincey, and I got to be critical of Thornton. If he's not in the rotation this year, it's a big indictment on him because he's got the build and the athleticism to be and playing in this system to be, and I said this last December, to be Kevin Durant joining Golden State in the NBA. That's what I thought this was like. And if he doesn't emerge like that, it's a major indictment against him. I gotta be honest.
Okay. And that, could it be 50% indictment on him and 50% that Tennessee's receivers are just so darn good?
They are, but if he was able to get into that rotation, they would go 4 wide more because that way Warren can take drives off and they don't have to worry about tight ends, but they're not doing that, is what you said. It seems like they're very committed to Warren staying on the field, at least most of the time at tight end. They were really trying to keep him healthy in spring practice. In fall camp. So that's kind of a concern. Now, maybe we're reading way too much into this. I mean, again, this could be just one of those, because McCoy and Ramel Keaton will be gone next year, so Thornton will be in there at that point. And Thornton and Squirrel together starting, that's just going to be crazy. But so that's highly possible. But I don't know. There just seems to be a little bit of there seems to be something concerning about the fact that Thornton hasn't really taken one of those jobs because he's got a better build than anybody at receiver.
Well, and the thing that guys like Mike Matthews, for instance, the 5-star committed wide receiver prospect they don't want to hear this, but when Tennessee settles on its receivers, unlike its running backs, they play a lot of running backs, but when they settle on their wide receivers, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that those are the guys that are going to play primarily. Off the top of your head, who was Tennessee's fourth and fifth leading wide receiver last year or slot receiver? Off the top.
Oh, I think I can do this.
Okay, so we know off the top of our heads, we know Ramel Keaton, Brew, and Jaylen Hott were top three.
Yes, but Tillman was fourth because he did start 6 games last year.
Right. I was going to give you that. That's why I threw the 5 in there.
I think Squirrel was fifth because Squirrel got a lot of yards in garbage time last year. And I think he finished with over 400 yards receiving.
But the point being, if he's fifth and that's garbage time, there ain't a lot of dudes that are making plays when it matters outside of the top 3, right?
Right, and that's how it should be. I've never understood offensive-minded coaches that want to run like a 5-deep receiver rotation. I've never seen it work well. I mean, everybody talks, and Dave, you were covering at the time. I've talked about this before. Everybody talks what David Cutcliffe did with Eric Ainge. Remember when he took over for Randy Sanders in 2006? I thought the real story was what he did with Robert Meacham. David Cutcliffe said, we're not going to go 5 wide anymore. We're not going to have Chris Hannon, CJ Phaeton, Robert Meacham, Jason Swain, and Brett Smith. No, we're going to have Robert Meacham as the go-to, Jason Swain on the opposite, and Brett Smith in the slot, period, end of story. That's our rotation. Nothing. That was the first thing Cutcliffe did, and I think that did a lot for Ainge. I think it's a lot better for a quarterback when you shorten your receiver rotation.
I 110% agree. Want to address a couple of things on the message board. All the talk about the receivers is driving this is some of you guys crazy. Tennessee's a running football team. I know that sounds insane, but they're going to set it up with the run. And also Travis says in response to the Thornton talk, maybe Coach Heupel leans a little toward loyalty. He's already proven that a little with Joe. So I can understand that. Dante Thornton, if he makes a couple of mistakes, which everybody's going to in a new system, that can result in an interception with the way you have to read the safety. So I can certainly understand that if that's the case.